The hall glittered with chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls, cascading golden light over the marble floor. It was the annual Harrington Charity Gala, an event where wealth dressed itself in pearls and diamonds, where laughter sounded like polished crystal, and where everyone who mattered in the city of New York made an appearance. At the far end of the ballroom, Edward Harrington, a tall, silver-haired billionaire, stood with a glass of champagne in hand. His sharp suit seemed to cut through the air itself, his cold blue eyes sweeping across the guests with the superiority of a man who had conquered life. By his side was his only daughter, Charlotte Harrington, a 21-year-old blonde beauty dressed in an emerald silk gown. Charlotte wasn't just admired, she was feared. Known for her arrogance and for being a prodigy in ballet and contemporary dance, she had performed across Europe. To her, talent wasn't to be shared, it was a weapon used to remind others of their place. "Ladies and gentlemen," Edward's voice boomed across the ballroom as he tapped his glass. "Tonight, we gather not just for charity but to celebrate the unmatched grace of my daughter, Charlotte. She is, without doubt, the best dancer her generation has seen." Applause erupted, cameras flashed. Charlotte gave a perfect curtsy, her smile dripping with pride. But at the very back of the hall, near the servants' entrance, stood a young black woman no one had noticed. Her name was Amara Williams, a 20-year-old orphan who worked part-time at the event as a server just to afford her night classes. She carried a silver tray with trembling hands, her dark curls tucked beneath a plain cap, her brown eyes burning with something between envy and pain. Because Amara loved to dance. Not in theaters, not on glittering stages. She danced in the shadows of subway stations, in the cracked mirrors of abandoned studios, in the rain when no one was watching. Dance was her freedom, her prayer, her rebellion against the poverty and orphanhood that tried to chain her spirit. But to people like Edward Harrington and his daughter, girls like Amara were invisible. Until that night. "Tonight," Edward continued, "we are honored to have the city's elite watching. And I say this with confidence, there is no one, absolutely no one, who can match Charlotte's talent. If anyone dares to try, well," his smile curled with arrogance, "I'll pay their tuition at any school of their choice for the next 4 years." The crowd gasped. It was meant as a joke, a taunt, a rich man's careless boast. But Amara's tray slipped from her hands, the silver clattered against the floor, and all eyes turned. Her heart raced like a trapped bird in her chest. Edward's gaze landed on her, sharp and cruel. "You there," he said, his voice cutting the air. "What's your name, girl?" "Amara, sir," she whispered, her knees weak. "You heard my challenge, didn't you?" Edward smirked. "Do you think you can dance better than my daughter?" Laughter rippled through the hall. Charlotte tilted her chin, her blue eyes glistening with disdain. "Father, please," she said sweetly, though loud enough for all to hear. "She's just a server. She probably thinks dancing is swaying to street music." Amara's face burned, but something inside her snapped. All her life she had been mocked for being an orphan, for being poor, for dreaming too big. Tonight, standing in that glittering hall, humiliation ignited into defiance. She straightened her shoulders. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling but strong, "I can." The room went silent. Edward's laughter shook the chandeliers. "Did you hear that, everyone? The orphan girl thinks she can outdance Charlotte Harrington. This should be entertaining." "Father, this is ridiculous," Charlotte protested, though her lips curled into a smile. She loved humiliating people, it was sport for her. But Edward raised a hand. "No, my darling, let the girl try. A lesson in knowing one's place is always useful." The guests formed a circle. Amara stood in the middle, her plain uniform like a stain on the polished marble. Across from her, Charlotte floated gracefully, her dress shimmering like liquid emerald. "Music," Edward commanded. The orchestra struck up a lively piece, violins soaring like a storm. Charlotte began, her movements precise, flawless, her technique perfect. Every turn, every leap was measured elegance. The crowd cheered in awe. Then Amara closed her eyes. She didn't dance with rules, she danced with her soul. Her body moved like water, bending, flowing, breaking into sharp, unpredictable rhythms. She twisted and leapt, her bare feet slapping the marble as though claiming it for herself. Where Charlotte's dance was polished, Amara's was raw. Where Charlotte showed technique, Amara showed fire. The hall gasped, people whispered. Cameras began to flash again, but not for Charlotte, for Amara. Charlotte's smile cracked. She spun faster, pushed harder, but the harder she tried, the more it became clear she was being overshadowed. Amara ended her dance with a spin so powerful her cap flew off, curls spilling down her shoulders. She landed on one knee, chest heaving, eyes blazing. Silence filled the hall, then, as if breaking under the weight of truth, applause erupted louder than it had been for Charlotte. Guests stood clapping, cheering. Amara had won. Charlotte's face burned crimson. This is a joke, she snapped. She's a nobody, she has no training, no class, she doesn't belong here. Edward's jaw tightened. For the first time in years his arrogance faltered, but pride wouldn't let him back down. He forced a smile. Well, rules are rules. I did say I'd pay the tuition of anyone who could dance better, but don't get comfortable, girl. His voice grew cold. This city eats nobodies like you alive. The crowd murmured, some in admiration, others in mockery. Amara stood trembling, not from fear but from adrenaline. She had faced humiliation and turned it into triumph. But she had also made enemies. As the applause died down, Charlotte leaned close to her father, her eyes burning with hatred. I'll destroy her, she whispered. Edward's smile returned, sharp as a blade. No, my dear, we will. And as Amara slipped away into the night, clutching the promise of tuition that could change her life, she had no idea of the storm about to chase her. The Harringtons weren't finished. They had only just begun. The night after the gala, Amara sat on her narrow bed in the dim dormitory of St. Mary's Orphanage, the applause from the ballroom still echoing in her head. She had replayed every moment of the dance 100 times, Charlotte's smug expression turning into panic, the crowd's eruption of cheers, Edward Harrington's reluctant promise. She should have felt nothing but joy, yet a knot of fear twisted in her stomach. Because men like Edward Harrington didn't lose gracefully. By dawn, news outlets were ablaze. Orphan girl outdances heiress at gala. Harrington's daughter overshadowed by unknown talent. Street dancer humiliates the elite. Social media flooded with clips of Amara's performance, shaky phone recordings shared thousands of times. Hashtags with her name trended. Strangers called her the girl who danced with fire. At the orphanage, the younger children ran to her, their small faces glowing with pride. Amara, you're famous, one squealed, hugging her waist. Sister Agnes, the weary headmistress, pulled Amara aside. Child, you've stirred a hornet's nest, she warned, her wrinkled hands tightening around Amara's. The Harringtons are powerful, they won't forget what happened last night. Amara lifted her chin. They made a promise, he said he'd pay my tuition. Sister Agnes sighed, and men like Edward Harrington never like being forced to keep promises. Inside their penthouse suite overlooking Manhattan, Edward Harrington paced like a predator in a cage. An orphan, a nobody, humiliating us before the city's elite. Charlotte sat by the window, arms folded, eyes red with rage. She made me look like a fool, father, me. Do you know what they're saying online? They're mocking me. Edward poured himself a drink, his jaw tight. We'll handle her. Charlotte leaned forward. How? A cruel smile curved his lips. We'll give her what she thinks she wants, then take it away. 2 days later, a black limousine pulled up outside St. Mary's Orphanage. Out stepped Daniel Voss, Edward's polished lawyer with a contract in hand. Miss Williams, he said smoothly, handing her the document. Mr. Harrington is a man of his word. Here is your tuition agreement, 4 years, any school you choose. Amara's heart pounded as she scanned the paper. The Harringtons had actually honored the promise. Tears stung her eyes. But, Daniel added with a thin smile, there are conditions. You must represent the Harrington name, perform at their charity events, and of course maintain behavior befitting someone sponsored by their family. Any misconduct and the contract is void. Amara hesitated. She could feel the trap hidden beneath the ink, but this was her chance, her only chance to study dance properly, to break free of poverty. With trembling hands she signed. From the shadows of the orphanage gate, Charlotte watched from the limousine, her lips twisting into a cold smile. Welcome to the Harrington game, she whispered. At first everything seemed like a dream. Amara was enrolled at the prestigious New York Academy of Dance, where polished floors gleamed and world-class instructors barked commands. For the first time she danced without worrying about rent or hunger. She soaked up every lesson, every correction, every note. But whispers followed her. Other students, wealthy daughters and sons of elites, sneered behind her back. "That's the orphan girl," they'd whisper, "the charity case." Charlotte made sure of it. Though she studied abroad most of the year, her influence ran deep. Rumors spread like poison that Amara was ungrateful, that she had seduced Edward into sponsoring her, that she didn't belong. Then came the invitations. Late-night galas, lavish parties, performances at Harrington events. Amara was paraded around like a prize, introduced as our little protégé, her talent showcased but her dignity chipped away. One evening, after a performance at a Harrington fundraiser, Edward pulled her aside. His smile was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. "Never forget," he said softly, his hand tightening on her shoulder. "You exist here because of me. If you fail to please us, everything, your schooling, your future vanishes. Do you understand?" Amara nodded, her throat dry. She was beginning to see the bars of her new gilded cage. Amid the storm, Amara found an unexpected ally. His name was Liam Carter, a 23-year-old rising choreographer at the academy. Tall, with dark hair that always fell into his eyes, Liam was known for pushing boundaries in dance. Unlike the others, he didn't treat Amara as a charity case. "I saw your performance at the gala," he told her one evening after class. "You don't just dance steps, you tell stories. That's rare." No one had ever said that to her before. Slowly, they became friends. They stayed late in the studio, creating pieces together, laughing until the janitors kicked them out. Liam pushed her, challenged her, reminded her why she loved to dance in the first place. For the first time since the gala, Amara felt free again. But freedom has a cost. One afternoon, Amara arrived at class to find whispers and stares sharper than ever. Her phone buzzed with dozens of notifications. She opened one and froze. Her social media was flooded with leaked photos, pictures of her and Liam laughing together in the studio, edited to look scandalous. Headlines bloomed. Harrington's charity dancer caught in romantic scandal. Orphan girl rewards sponsors with disgrace. Her hands shook. She hadn't done anything wrong, nothing beyond friendship, but the damage was done. Sponsors began calling the Harringtons, questioning their judgment. That evening, Edward summoned her to the penthouse. "You stupid girl," he snarled, slamming the photos onto the table. "Do you realize what you've done to our reputation?" Amara's voice broke. "I didn't. This isn't true." Charlotte stepped from the shadows, her smile like broken glass. "Of course it is, but the world doesn't care, Amara. Perception is reality, and right now you look like a cheap distraction." Edward's eyes gleamed. "One more mistake and you're finished." Amara walked out shaking, tears streaming down her face. She had wanted freedom. Instead, she was trapped in a game where every move was against her. Days later, Charlotte confronted her privately after rehearsal. "You don't belong here," she hissed, circling Amara like a predator. "You think talent is enough? Talent is cheap. Power is what matters. My father owns this city and I own you, remember that." Amara's chest tightened with fury. "I'll never belong to you." Charlotte smirked. "Then I'll enjoy watching you fall." She leaned closer, whispering, "Liam isn't safe either. Get too close to him and you'll drag him down with you." Amara froze. The threat was clear. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just about her dancing, it was about survival. Weeks passed, the pressure grew unbearable. Amara began to doubt herself. Every time she stepped into the studio, whispers clawed at her confidence. Every performance for the Harringtons felt like dancing with a knife pressed to her throat. One night, exhausted and broken, she returned to the orphanage and collapsed in front of Sister Agnes. "I can't do this anymore," she sobbed. "They'll destroy me. No matter how hard I fight, it will never be enough." Sister Agnes cupped her face gently. "Child, listen to me. You weren't given this gift to please the Harringtons. You were given it to change lives. Their power is temporary, but the truth in your dance, that is eternal." Amara wiped her tears, her heart pounding. Eternal. The word lit a spark. Maybe she couldn't beat them at their game, but she could make the world see her truth. The next day, Liam found her in the studio. "I've been asked to choreograph a piece for the upcoming international dance showcase," he said carefully. "I want you as my partner." Amara's breath caught. The showcase wasn't just a performance, it was broadcast worldwide. A chance to stand on a stage where the Harringtons couldn't control the narrative. But it was risky. If she agreed, she'd be defying Edward directly. Her mind raced. She saw Charlotte's cold smirk, Edward's threats, the children at the orphanage cheering her name. She saw her younger self, barefoot in the rain, dancing because it was the only way to silence the hunger in her stomach. She lifted her chin. Yes, I'll do it. For the first time in weeks, hope bloomed in her chest. But hope in the Harrington world was dangerous. And as Edward watched her from the shadows of the academy that evening, his smile returned, sharp and merciless. "Dance all you want, little orphan," he murmured. "The higher you rise, the harder you'll fall." The weeks leading up to the International Dance Showcase were brutal. The showcase wasn't just any stage, it was broadcast live to millions across the globe, a platform where legends were made and forgotten in the same breath. For Amara, it was her chance to show the world who she really was, not the Harrington's puppet, not the orphan mocked at a gala, but a dancer with fire in her soul. But for Edward and Charlotte Harrington, it was their chance to end her for good. The night before the showcase, Liam found Amara alone in the studio, rehearsing until sweat glistened on her skin. Her movements were sharp, desperate, almost frantic. "You need to rest," he said softly. She shook her head. "If I don't get this right tomorrow, they'll crush me." He stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Amara, listen, they can't destroy the truth. When you dance, people see it. That's why they're scared of you. Promise me, whatever happens tomorrow, you dance your story, not theirs." She nodded, her throat tight. But what neither of them knew was that Charlotte stood in the doorway, watching with venom in her eyes. She turned and walked away, her mind already spinning with a plan. The grand stage was a cathedral of light. Thousands filled the seats and cameras hovered like hawks, ready to beam the performances to living rooms across the world. Backstage buzzed with chaos, dancers stretching, makeup artists rushing, producers shouting. Amara and Liam waited in the wings, their names called for the second half of the evening. Next up, the announcer boomed, an original duet choreographed by Liam Carter and performed by Liam Carter and Amara Williams. The audience erupted in applause. Amara's heart raced, her palms damp. This was it. But then disaster struck. Just as they were about to step on stage, Liam stumbled. He grabbed his ankle, groaning in pain. "It's twisted," he hissed, collapsing against the wall. Panic surged, stagehands rushed over, chaos exploding. Someone muttered about getting a replacement. Another whispered about canceling the performance. Amara's world spun. She knew, deep down she knew this wasn't an accident. And then she saw her, Charlotte, standing at the far end of the hallway, her arms folded, her smile sharp as glass. "You didn't think I'd let you shine, did you?" she mouthed before disappearing into the crowd. "Amara," a producer barked, "your partner can't go on, do we cancel?" Her chest heaved. This was the trap. The Harringtons wanted her broken, humiliated, forgotten. But then she heard Liam's voice, strained but fierce. "Go, do it without me, tell your story." Her eyes burned with tears. Alone, on an international stage, it was madness. But then she remembered Sister Agnes's words, "Their power is temporary, the truth in your dance is eternal." Amara lifted her chin. "I'll dance." The curtain rose. She stepped onto the vast stage, a lone figure swallowed by light. The audience murmured, confused. Whispers spread. "Where's her partner? What's happening?" The music began, soft, haunting, a melody meant for two, but Amara transformed it. She danced alone, her body carving out both voices of the duet. One moment strong and commanding, the next vulnerable and reaching. Every step told her story, the orphan who had nothing, the girl mocked in a glittering hall, the cage of the Harringtons, the pain, the humiliation, the fire that refused to die. She spun until her breath caught, leapt until the stage shook, collapsed to her knees only to rise again. She was not just dancing, she was fighting, breaking chains with every movement. The audience was silent, not a cough, not a shuffle, just thousands of eyes locked on her. And when the music crashed to its final note, she fell to the floor, arms outstretched, tears on her cheeks. For a heartbeat there was silence. Then the world roared. The audience rose in a thunderous standing ovation. Cheers, whistles, applause that shook the rafters. The cameras zoomed in on her tear-streaked face, broadcasting it across the globe. Amara Williams had not just danced. She had conquered. Backstage, Edward Harrington's face was a storm. "Impossible," he hissed. She was supposed to fail. Charlotte's hands shook, rage boiling in her veins. she humiliated me again. But as they watched the crowd's wild response, they both knew their power over Amara was slipping. Because no amount of money, no smear campaign, no sabotage could erase what millions had just witnessed. The truth was out. After the performance, Amara staggered off stage, her body trembling with exhaustion. Liam, still limping, caught her in his arms. "You did it," he whispered. "You burned the world tonight." Before she could reply, a woman approached, tall, elegant, with silver hair and eyes that sparkled with authority. Madame Celeste, director of a world-renowned European dance company. "Miss Williams," she said, her French accent crisp, "your performance was transcendent. I want you in my company. We will tour the world. You will not just dance, you will inspire millions." Amara's breath caught. It was everything she had dreamed of, a stage beyond the Harringtons' reach, a future that was hers alone. As Amara prepared to leave that night, Edward cornered her, his jaw clenched. "Do not think this is over," he snarled. "Without me, you are nothing, remember that." Amara met his gaze, her voice steady, her eyes blazing with the fire that had carried her from the orphanage to the world stage. "No, Mr. Harrington, without people like me, people who work, who fight, who dream, you are nothing," and the whole world just saw it. For the first time, Edward had no reply. Charlotte turned away, her face pale, as if the weight of her father's failing pride finally pressed down on her. Amara walked past them, her head held high. She was no longer their pawn, she was free. Weeks later, Amara boarded a plane with Liam by her side and a contract in her hand. The orphanage children had thrown her a farewell party, their cheers echoing in her heart. She looked out the airplane window as the city lights faded below. Once, those lights had seemed like stars she could never reach. Now, they were behind her. She had learned the hardest truth. The world will try to break you, mock you, even chain you. But if you hold onto your gift, if you dare to fight with it, no cage can hold you. Because true power isn't in money. It's in the fire of a soul that refuses to be silenced. And that, dear friends, is the story of Amara Williams, the orphan who danced her way from ridicule to freedom. But let me ask you, what do you think is the most powerful lesson from Amara's journey? And if you were in her shoes, would you have had the courage to step onto that stage alone? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, I'd love to hear them. And don't forget, tell me where in the world you're watching from and hit subscribe for more thrilling, lesson-filled stories like this one. Because remember, sometimes the smallest voice can shake the biggest empire.